So I'm here today. We have adjusted the schedule a little bit. We're going to do Mastermind for half an hour, and then we're going to switch over to Ask a Coach. So if you have questions at 1:30, we'll switch to that. And if you don't, then you guys are free to go. But as far as Mastermind goes, what's going on with you guys? What would be useful for us to talk about?
I was gonna say maybe we can piggyback off of why it's a good time to buy right now, because I had already 2 conversations with people just recently, and they both said the same thing.
They asked you that question?
Yeah. Well, they asked me well, isn't interest rate still high now? Like, should you even be wanting to buy at this time? And I'm just like, well, and then I gave them my little response.
Okay. What response did you give them?
I told them it's always a great time to buy, as long as you talk to your lender, and if those monthly mortgage payments seem doable for you and your family, then it's a great time for you and your family to buy. If it doesn't seem doable, then it's not a good time for you and your family to buy. At least you would know now what are the requirements, or what is something that you have a rough estimate of now owing. So, which is why it's always great to talk to a lender. Do you want to talk to a lender? And then they'll be like, maybe not right now. And then, yeah.
All right. So is that kind of the typical response you get?
Typical, yeah.
Any suggestion from the rest of you in regards to how to approach that question, or what methods or experiences you guys have had?
Yeah, I kind of say the same thing Carlos says, and just kind of remind people that monthly payments are important, being able to afford and maintain your monthly payments. And just in general, like, home ownership is one of the best forms of building and creating wealth for you and your family. And when people do say something about is now the best time, I always make a little joke of, oh, the best time to buy was 20 years ago, but we can't do that now. And then kind of just go into home appreciation, how home appreciates normally about 2% every year. And just when you buy a home, if you're going to be in it for more than 3 years, and if you sell it after 3 years, you're more than likely going to make money from that. So just kind of showing people the value of owning a home and why it's important. Maybe they don't necessarily know as much, and then you kind of educate them a little bit.
I think Carlos put it in the chat, but I agree. I love that 20 years ago was the best time to buy, but we can't do anything about that now. Anthony, what kind of response do you get when you go into that script?
People usually laugh too, and they're like, oh yeah, 20 years ago would have been the best time to buy. But people are normally, if they're not aware of kind of what I'm telling them about, normally they're like, oh wow, I didn't really know that. And most of the time that's the responses, that they didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and pointing out that home prices typically appreciate about 2% a year, and if you're going to be in there for 3 years, then you're most likely going to be able to sell, at least break even, if not make a profit. But because sometimes just giving them those factual numbers, especially depending on what type of personality they have, because if some people are very much into numbers and things, they might need that proof to kind of show it to them. But even if they're not, it's not like you're going into this great spiel about the numbers. It's just, a quick sentence. They appreciate about 2% a year, and if you're going to be there 3 years. What we've seen in the last couple of years have just been crazy, right? Anyone else have something that they tell people when they are questioning whether now's a good time to buy or not? I think that.
Greg.
Oh, go ahead, Carlos.
Greg was saying something, but we can't hear him.
Muffled.
A little bit. Go ahead.
See if I can get a better connection.
Okay, yeah, it's definitely a bad connection.
I would text it.
Yeah, Greg, you can put it in the chat, or if you want to log off and log back on, either will work. Let me pull up my chat just so I can make sure I see it. Something I think that's good is having stories, even if they're not our own stories. So, instead of saying, I had a client, we could say, we had a client, or there was a client, or I know someone who, and maybe talk about how, they bought a house and didn't think it was a good time to buy and ended up making money when they sold it. Some type of story like that. Even people who bought at the height of the crash last time, could sell now and still make a profit, right?
Yeah, I always give them my story, as in like when I was gonna buy and then I didn't. And if I would have bought in 2 years ago, I could have sold in the house now, 2022, for, I was reading in some places it went up like 16% of equity. So I was like, in just 2 years, it jumps up so high. So you never know. So I always give them my example. And I tell them, don't be like me.
Don't be
And then they're like,
Carlos.
yeah, and then they'll be like, well, why aren't you buying yet? And I was like, that is what I'm working towards. I was like, because I need to own. Like and then I'll tell them, like, I'm giving you guys all this spill, but I'm not even taking my own advice yet. So I need to start doing that. And then, yeah, as long as you're able to like connect with them, they will like consider and want to talk to a lender. But if you don't have that connection, they're just like, wishy-washy, then it'll be hard to convert them.
Carlos, you don't have to share this, but just from the client aspect of, if you're telling me it's a great time to buy, but you haven't bought yet, what's stopping you from buying?
I have 2 car payments under my name. I have
Okay.
a 2015 and a 2021 truck under my name, because I thought that I should work on my credit to qualify for more. So that was the dumb mistake I made. And I wasn't even taught, so this is why I'm like, I wasn't taught this. So this is why I'm trying to tell you this. Don't buy a car.
Yeah, and that's a great story to share.
Yeah.
And not only is that a great story for them to learn from, but even if they don't need to learn that lesson, it still makes you relatable and it makes you human and not just this sales guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
What about interest rates? So interest rates are still high. What response do you guys have for that?
So
Maybe.
I just found this out. Oh, sorry, Pamela. I just found an app that will give you access. I still haven't messed with it. I'm still playing with it, but it shows you literally the past 20, 30 years of interest, and you could just show your client on your phone and literally like move the little needle to the year that you want, and then it'll tell you what interest rate that year was. So I always tell them, it's the average market, and then I'm gonna start showing them because I just found this app like 2 days ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great resource to have. Well, and that's what people don't realize is that the last couple of years we've been in an abnormal market. And people felt like it was going to stay that way. Some people don't even really remember the market, before that, depending on, how old they are and what type of interest they had in purchasing a home, a couple of years ago. But yeah, I mean, there was a time when interest rates were 18%. Like, can you even imagine? When I moved into my home, I was talking to the neighbor and she said that when they bought their house and they never refinanced, I don't know if they weren't financially able to or just lazy, but they were still paying like 12% interest on their home loan. I mean, that was like, I think 10 years ago or something. I don't know, maybe a little longer, but like so crazy, right? But what about so when you rent a house, how much interest rate do you have?
100%.
100%. So, so maybe we ask them, well, would you be willing to pay 100% interest rate?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll, their response is going to be like, what? No, that'd be crazy. And well, that's what you're doing when you rent, right? Or we could ask them, do you guys have any other ideas of what questions we could ask them to kind of just turn it around and have it make sense to them?
Not really a question, but what I wanted to say was it's still a really good time to buy, and you could refinance when the rates come down.
Yeah, if they come down, we don't even know if they'll come down, but yes, definitely they can refinance. What's that expression? What is it? Date the rate, marry the house.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Anthony, I think you said it earlier that owning a home is a really great way to build wealth. In fact, if you look at the statistics, I think I was reading that it is the easiest way or the best way to build wealth is by owning a home. And so do you want to build wealth for your family, or do you want to build wealth for your landlord's family?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Obviously, we want to get the best deal that we can, get the lowest rate, get the lowest priced house, but is it more important to wait around and try to time everything so that we're getting the best of the best, which, like you guys said, that was 20 years ago, right? Or do we want to jump in now and start from where we're at?
Yeah, that's what I tell people. I tell people that trying to time the market isn't a good idea, and that's no one can really ever do that. Just ultimately, the best time to buy is when you're ready. You're financially ready, you're emotionally ready, and you're physically ready. And then kind of going back to the interest rate question, one of my responses is I'll tell people like, yeah, the past few months we had very high interest rates, but now they're starting to come down, is what I tell people.
Mm-hmm. So Anthony, if the rates are this for anybody, if the rates are starting to come down, then shouldn't I just wait a couple more months until they come down lower? Because it's only a couple months.
Yeah, I tell people that we don't have a magic ball. We can't predict where the rates are going up or down. We just know where they're at today and where they've been.
Okay. Any other arguments for that? And that's the perfect answer. I use the crystal ball analogy all the time. I don't know if I said that right, but what do we think that prices are going to do this year?
Well,
Go up?
I just keep telling them that they're gonna slowly steady. They're gonna hit like a plateau, and then but I mean, like I always give that analogy, the crystal ball. Oh, like nobody really knows the house or the government meets. It meets, what is it, like 5-6 times a year. So interest rates can always change.
We're still in a shortage of inventory, so eventually they're going to go up if we can hang on or get our foot in the door, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. So if they do drop, what do you guys seeing right now? Do you like, and I don't necessarily know the answer to this, but right now, do you guys think prices are, I mean, I know, the end of last year was kind of slow. We're getting into spring. Are you guys thinking that prices are still dropping? Do you think they've leveled out, or do you think they're going up?
I think they're kind of leveled out, and always home prices are increasing throughout the years, but they're just kind of slowly leveling out. Like they're not increasing super high like they were at a point. They're just kind of slowly going up. And then, yeah, I tell people about inventory, what Pam said, and that's a big reason why home prices are going to stay up, is because we don't have that inventory.
I feel like they've come down a tiny bit, but with spring coming, and people wanting to like get their year in place and what they want to invest in, I feel like, I don't know, I think they could hold.
Are you guys like sensing a shift in the market right now?
Yeah.
Things are getting busier, right?
Yeah, there's a lot more listings.
which we always see activity go up in spring and summer, but people are getting their tax returns where now they maybe have money for a down payment that they didn't have before, or maybe they're able to pay off debt, which puts them in a position to buy now. What is that going to do to, to prices, or what is that going to do to like demand?
Well, increased demand, I would think.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be more buyers out there now, and it's going to be harder for people to get a better price. I think the market is kind of normalizing a little, but there's still a lot of overpriced properties out there, and we can always tell people also if interest rates drop, house prices are going to go up, and then it's going to be even harder for them to buy.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because it's kind of hard to have both, right? Low prices and low interest rates, because that's just not how it works with supply and demand. Yeah, so nobody wanted to buy in like November, December, right? And that's normal. We have a slowdown. I think we had even a larger slowdown just because of interest rates and all of that and uncertainty in the market. But November and December was actually a great time to buy because there wasn't competition out there, right? And so for those that are wanting to buy now, but maybe wanting to wait a couple of months until, maybe interest rates go down again, you're just going to have more competition, and then that's going to drive your offer price up because they're going to have counter offers and whatnot. So yeah, what about digging into like the reason they want to buy? Do you guys do that when you're talking to somebody?
Yeah, that would be the thing for them to get the actual motivation behind, because if they're not motivated, they're just not going to do it. I had customers that said, oh yeah, I talk to a lender next week, and then I follow up and they're like, oh no, I never follow up. It's because they're just not motivated to do it. And
what can we do when we sense that they're not motivated?
Find out their motivations.
I seen a script that said to follow up with them, and it said, hey, I don't want to bother you, and I don't want to be wasting any of your time, but I would like to know if you're still in the market, so that way I could still be sending you like properties like for them to view, rather than just and then it said like I will still send you properties, as just they're not going to be as consistent, as you would be if you were active. And then that would put them in a situation where like, well, no, I want to see all the active stuff. And then I would tell them like, when you're active, you do receive a little bit more. So then you're part of this. And like if you tell them like if they're part of a club type of thing, like they would want to be involved in that circle. So then they would want to receive all the up-to-date ones. And then that's how you can realize. I barely seen that on YouTube the other day too.
That's a good idea. What do you guys think about that? Did they say like to like name the club, like
they're in a club is a good idea.
No, like would they say like a VIP set, like all the VIP gets the first as soon as houses are listed, put them in there, and then they're so they say they're VIP club, so or like you just put them in a VIP, which is I want to be part of the VIP, so I guess he was saying that people want to be associated with something that other people are not able to get.
Yeah,
I think what's good about that too is that it really kind of shows if they're serious, then this is what's going to happen. If they're not, then I'm going to kind of pull my hands back a little bit.
Yeah, and it's
yeah, because we don't want to be spending
Go ahead.
We don't want to be spending a lot of time on them if they're not even motivated, right?
Yeah. And then even though it's automated, you kind of want to make it seem like you are the one putting in that time, sending it to them. So I would just say, hey, I'm just going to I'm just gonna be sending you once a month type of thing. You know, I'm not gonna forget about you, but all you're going to do is just move them from a different smart plan.
Yeah. What about an idea of, so if we talk to somebody, going back to what Maria said, if we talk to somebody, we tell them they need to go talk to the lender, they seem like they're going to talk to the lender, and then we follow up a week later and no, they haven't made it there. What's a good response to that?
I normally explain that we can't go out and view properties until they have spoken with the lender. And just in general, like if you haven't spoken with a lender, you don't know how much your price tag is to go out and shop for homes. And you can't really shop for homes unless you know the price range in which you're looking at, basically. And then I also explain, when you talk to a loan officer, they're going to figure out your monthly payments for you. You can tell them what monthly payment you're comfortable with, and then we can kind of go from there to structure your offer with everything.
Okay. And that's a great response, perfect response. But what happens if we tell them that and then 2 weeks goes by and they still haven't spoken to the lender? What can we do? We could have the conversation Carlos is having if you're not really, if you want to be part of the VIP club. But other than that conversation, what else could we do?
Just keep following through and showing them properties.
Well, I would say that if they aren't willing to go to the lender, I wouldn't want to be spending time, showing them properties. So sending them properties maybe, but not actually, because I don't want to take time away from my family to go show somebody property that won't even go find out how much they are qualified for, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's okay to tell them that. I mean, obviously in a friendly manner, but just kind of explain, look, this is how it works. But what about taking them either to their pain point or their pleasure point? And you guys know what I mean when I say that?
Yeah, I think so.
So it goes back to their motivation, right? What's motivating them to move? Is it because they want something with this move, or they need to get away from something with this move? So motivation can be positive or negative. But maybe just, slowing them down and saying, hey, so let me just ask you, like, I know that you want to buy a house, and we talked about, you want to buy a house because you need a bigger yard and an extra bedroom. But I sense hesitation because the next step for us to take is for you to go speak to a lender, and it seems like you're not motivated to do that. So knowing that you want to have this big yard, like, where are you at that? What's getting in the way? And just really take them to that conversation and finding out, and not being afraid to go, I always say we should go at least 3 questions deep on, like, what's stopping them. Right? Because they can tell us all day, a lot of times people don't give us, like, not that they don't give us the truth, but they don't give us the whole story. It's like when you're having a bad day and somebody comes up and says, oh, how are you doing today? And you're like, I'm fine. Well, on one level you are fine, but on another level you're not fine, but you just don't want to share that with them, right? But that's sometimes when we ask them for their motivation, and then we maybe sometimes send them to the lender too quickly even, but why do you want to move? I need an extra bedroom. Okay, great. Next thing is to go talk to the lender. Well, what about, I need an extra bedroom. Okay, why do you need an extra bedroom? What's having an extra bedroom going to do for you and your family? What's important about that? What happens if you don't end up moving and don't get that extra bedroom? And really dig into, like, the emotional aspect, because just needing an extra bedroom is just needing a bedroom, right? Like, there's no meaning to that. But what's the meaning about why they need that extra bedroom? And then if you can figure that out, and then you can bring them back to that and remind them of that when they get stuck, then maybe you can push them forward into, because going and talking to a lender is not fun, right? You might have to take time off work. You might have to go through, your bank statements or whatever and try to find paperwork. You've got to be vulnerable about, maybe I have bad debt, or I haven't made my payments, or whatever the case might be, right? So it's scary, and it's a pain in the butt to have to go talk to a lender, even though we know in our head that that's the next step. We've got to get them on an emotional level, right? Because the head knowledge doesn't really motivate you the way the heart knowledge will. So do you guys think that you're like how do you guys think you are in regards to getting to their motivation? Do you guys think you do a good job on that, or you could do better on it?
Yeah, I think I do a pretty good job. Because just like you said,
I think I need
make
to-
it into a conversation.
Maria, what was that?
I said, I think I need to do better. Just ask more questions and get really deep into what it's motivating them. Although I have one client about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago that the husband was really motivated, but the wife wasn't. And he was telling me, it's because you need to talk to her and motivate her. I'm like, I don't think that's like my job to go and tell the wife you need to, get in the same page with your husband because you guys need a property. But I do understand that. It's just sometimes we can't go and actually, get somebody motivated to do it.
Well, and that's the thing, because sometimes they're just not motivated. And if they're not motivated, we can't change that, right? But that tells us something about the level of effort we want to put into them if they're not motivated, right? What were you going to say, Pam?
That she's a marriage counselor.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is, as a real estate agent, we wear a lot of different hats, and yeah, marriage counselor could be one of them, right? Therapist, cheerleader. Yeah.
I had to deal with the situation that I didn't want to deal with.
In regards to a married couple?
No, a couple that they were wanting to buy a house, and then she was a family member, so they wanted to buy a house, and then they did not buy a house because they didn't qualify. But we were taught to still keep in touch every quarterly, so I did that, and apparently they're arguing, they're fighting, and she needed me to go pick her up and drop her off somewhere else, and I'm just like, yeah, this is the last time I'm doing this. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's a different level because it was family, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of our clients are, if there are SOI, they are people that we know on a more personal level. And so, yeah, sometimes that will happen.
Well, see, she was family, but she's not even like family. Like she's a distant family, so I had no business. But that's one of the hats I wore that day.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they're fighting like that, then maybe not buying the house is the blessing, right?
Yeah.
But if you still, well, I know you don't want to stay in touch, and that's okay, because sometimes there are clients that we just need to let go, right? I've had clients like that it's like, okay, no.
Yeah, I'm not reaching out with that one.
Yeah.
But I do need to work on asking more questions, just like Maria do. I do ask a few, but there's so much more that you guys give examples to, and you guys get really in depth. So I definitely need to work in that.
What do you think stops you from asking questions? For any of you guys that don't go deep enough on your questions, what do you think stops you?
They don't want all the information. I think maybe they just eager, and they're as soon all the information that I do give them, they're already excited to move forward or sometimes like that. So I just need to know the basics.
But that's you providing information to them. But what about the questions are designed for you to get information from them?
Yeah.
Right. So what stops you from getting more information from them?
I don't know.
Sometimes it feels like maybe the questions are, and I would want to build more personal rapport before I ask those personal questions.
And I can definitely understand that. And definitely each client is different, and we have to, make decisions based on the client and their personality and their situation and all of that, right? But if you think about it, if you went to a doctor or you went to a lawyer because you had, you know, an issue, are you going to feel better if they ask more questions about your situation or less questions because they feel like they need to get to know you better? Right?
Yeah, you're right. And also too, I guess the more questions you do ask, the more professional it makes you seem.
Mm-hmm. And then what's a good response if they say, because if you're asking questions, because there is a legitimate fear of somebody coming back and saying, well, why do you need to know that? Or that's none of your business. In fact, I had a client one time and I asked him, I was doing the initial questions and I asked him, so who's going to be living in the house with you? And it was going to be him and his daughter, but he's like, well, why do you need to know that? Now this particular client was a veteran and he had like traumatic brain injury and PTSD, and like he was not a good candidate to be to even buy a house, but and so he was very distrustful as a person in general. But when he asked me that, well, why do you need to know that? I felt like then I was like backtracking, like, oh gosh, you know, I'm sorry, I don't need to know that, right? And basically that's kind of what I told him. But what response would you have to a client on whatever the question is? Well, why do you need to know that?
I just tell people it helps me better understand you and your motivations. And it helps me better find a house that's going to fit you and your family who's going to be living in it.
Yep. Yeah, that's a perfect response. And so this is where like practicing scripts and conversations and whatnot, like that comes into play. I used to do it in person in our office. We would get together and we would meet, and I always had fun with it because I would not like to give the agent a hard time, but when they would ask questions, I would just come up with like crazy answers and, you know, kind of just make it a little bit fun. But we have scripts practice, obviously, you know, from 9 to 9:15 in the morning as part of the Kickstart thing. But if you don't attend that, or even if you do attend that and you want extra script practice, like find somebody in the group and set up a timer sometimes where you guys can get together and practice those things. You can practice asking those deeper questions, and you can practice some of the things that you might not initially feel comfortable. And the more you say stuff out loud, the more likely you are to feel comfortable doing it in the future, right? Because it's one thing to do it in our head, and it's another thing to do it out loud. Now, my husband personally will not run scripts with me, but if you have a spouse or a family member or someone who will, utilize them if you can. So it's 1:35 right now. So we're about 5 minutes over because we just had a shortened mastermind time today. But was this helpful to you guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Mary.
All right,
Thank
cool.
you.
Cool. You're welcome. So we're going to switch over to the Ask a Coach. If you guys have a question, feel free to stay on. If not, then, have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Lori. Have
You're
a good day.
welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.